G'day guys and welcome, my name's Michael and I am the DeadAussieGamer, here to share with you my tips, tricks, ideas and strategies for playing and running tabletop role-playing games. Today we are premiering our very first episode of our Rolling With series, where we talk to various members of the communities and basically find out what it is we all love about role-playing games, how our differing experiences have led us to enjoy this hobby, and of course some advice for dealing with members from various different smaller communities within role-playing games. Today, we are going to be rolling with young players. What is it that you need to know in order to deal with, handle, or otherwise approach members of the young persuasion in role-playing? Well, our guest for today is me, because I have a very short guest list. If you want to appear as a guest in, the Dead Aussie Gamer stuff, let me know in the chat below. I will put it up there. As many of you know, I currently work in the local government at a youth center as a youth worker who runs role-playing games for young adults. I've been doing so for 5 years. It's been an absolutely amazing and treasured experience. All of the games that I play at the youth center have literally fed into my experience as a GM and helped me grow and become a stronger and better game master. And a lot of the experience that I have really came down to the difference of my playstyle between me playing with my adult friends and me playing with the young adults at the youth center. They have an entirely different set of needs, an entirely different set of requirements, and almost an entirely different playstyle that you as a GM need to be aware of before you even sit down to a table. So let's start by talking about that. Now, the super young players, or as I like to call them, the baby role players in their little eggs ready to break out, and right? These baby role players are usually between the ages of 10 to 14. They are learning for the very first time what it is to enjoy the notion of play while at the same time adhering to those strict and stringent rules that we know from role-playing games. At this level, it is all about engagement. It is all about creating an entertaining atmosphere. It is about you performing to these people in a pantomime that they can interact with and be tangibly a part of. It is a great way to kind of get them to begin to chat, to begin to make friends and create bonds. And of course, it helps them get to a point where they learn that it is okay to enjoy the things that they love. You know, there's nothing embarrassing about putting on silly voices. There's nothing embarrassing about standing out and pantomiming the actions that your character takes. The baby players, the baby role players in this stage are ready to be molded into something amazing and something wonderful. And it's a responsibility every GM who plays with younger players needs to keep in mind. Rule number one, I suppose, for dealing with the baby role players is do not stay stubborn and rigid to any one rule system. The rules need to serve your players, not the other way around. And what I mean by that is that if one of the kids wants to play a character who wields nunchucks that shoot shurikens, make it happen. Use what you can. Play it by ear. Make sure that they have the ability to express themselves, because that's the important thing. That's the thing that they're going to latch onto stronger than anything else, was I able to do the fun thing? In a world where video games are ever prevalent, we are, in a role-playing sense, competing with that, What can we offer that video games can't? And that one word is freedom. We can give players the freedom to express themselves in a way that video games can't. So when you're dealing with the young players, that's what you want to really nail in. Number two, distraction. When dealing with baby role players, it's very easy for them to get distracted. Don't have a session go for longer than 2 hours. Honestly, I've never played a game where after, maybe 3 hours is fine. Anything longer than that, and usually they're tuning out, they're doing other things, they're on their phone, they've lost their train of thought and they become tired and irritable. So, yeah, again, 2 to 3 hours is usually a solid time for gameplay with young players. Number three, etiquette and pre-established rules. Understand one thing. As a GM who GMs adults, you will have an understanding of what etiquette is. Do not use your phone at the table. Do not build dice towers. If someone else is talking, don't talk over them. If your GM is, sort of creating a scene, don't interject with commentary that is just going to be your one-liners of absolute garbage instead of listening and enjoying the story. These little bits of etiquette that exist within our understanding now is not existent with young players. Be aware of this. Don't bombard them with the, oh yes, by the way, you can't do this, and no, you shouldn't do that, and rah, 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 right? You take an authoritative stance like that with a young player, they'll backlash against you, and they will not have fun. Or they'll try and tease you. It's a kind of catch-22 here. Instead, what you should be doing is gradually introducing them to that style of etiquette, rewarding them for following the etiquette, and, sort of maybe not punishing them for not following it, but you are not giving them anything special. By rewarding the people who are showing good etiquette, you eventually just establish and create that solid foundation of roleplay you want from your very, very young players. So that's dealing with the baby role players. Baby role players. Now, when they hatch and they become teenagers, you're looking at maybe at the ages of 14 to 18-ish. You are now looking at the boundary pushers. These are the ones who really try and explore role playing. And I've got to say this: teenagers are the best people to test you as a GM, because they will push, they will prod, they will focus on trying their hardest to either break you, break the game, break their characters, and you don't really ever understand your limitations until you roleplay with a group of teenagers. Let me give you an example. I had, for the longest time, a character who for some reason or another just constantly wanted to flip the bird at everyone they met. That was it. Didn't matter if they were a sheriff, didn't matter if they were a king, didn't matter if they were a peasant or a bad guy. It was just, I flipped the bird. Now, amusing as that is, it's not funny. It doesn't get funny, the third, fourth, fifth, millionth time they do it. But as a GM, what do? Do you ignore them? Do you reprimand them for the vulgar action? Or do you play it by ear? By accepting it and finding that boundary, saying, okay, you flipped the bird. Nearby, a small crow lands on a picket fence. Your character rushes off in a blind and almost involuntary rage, grabbing the small creature by its small talons and then proceeding to make it flip. You have flipped the bird. And then continue on. Now, if you keep doing stuff like that, eventually everyone's having a bit of a laugh because you've made a play on words, they've done it, they're getting a laugh, they're feeling good about it, they do it again, you do it again. Now it becomes a play. It becomes something you're having fun with. You're having fun with this person who's, flipping the bird. At the same time, sneakily, you as a GM are not letting that boundary push interrupt or otherwise disrupt your game. Because if, of course, your player was doing vulgar gestures to the quest givers or to the sheriff and stuff like that, then the repercussions in your game are obviously going to be bad, right? And then if you play that, then you get to see the consequences and the game goes awry, and then the players start disliking the character who has gotten them into trouble. It becomes a whole thing, okay? So you don't really want to engage with people pushing the boundaries to that, in that direct level that you would with adults. You want to make sure that they're still having fun. You want to make sure that you, when you get challenged and you get pushed, you remember that you're dealing with people learning to roleplay. Okay, let's go with our list now. So, number 1, when your boundaries are pushed, question what will you allow to beat you. As a GM, you are omnipotent. You have infinite power within the role-playing game space, so long as the players provide you with that. As long as the players are sitting there and buying into your story, you have unlimited power. So what is it that a player will do to try and push you to the brink? I'm going to give you this story. It was quite a nasty story, to be honest, and it was one that really tested me as a game master. A long time ago, I had a player who was on a table. I was running Rise of the Rune Lords, a fantastic game by Paizo. And it was, I think it was like maybe book 2 or book 3, somewhere around there, when I learnt that one of my players was actually cheating. He had downloaded the copy of the adventure, was reading it in advance, and during every game was basically finding every secret door, outmaneuvering every single monster. They would basically, solve things incredibly fast and would take literally the shortest route to take and gather all the things they needed for every quest. But sadly, of course, I play so many games, I very quickly recognized what this player was doing. And when I figured it out and when I got confirmation of it, I flipped out. I freaked. I had no idea what to do with this. I actually needed to excuse myself for a while from the classroom. I stepped out. I went to my boss and I said, what is the legality of me throwing someone out of a window? They said, don't. So I didn't. But it really challenged me because any other situation, if that happened, look, if you want to read the pre-written adventure in advance just so that you know what's up ahead, that's fine. That's your experience that you are changing, right? But if you go up to a table and you start using that information to literally ruin the game for other people, that's when I've got a massive problem with that, right? And I didn't know what to do with this feeling. I didn't, if it was an adult, I would have either punched him in the face or I would have literally just thrown them out and said, I never want to see you again. But you can't do that with young players. You can't do that with young people because the young people are pushing those boundaries. They want to know where your edge is. And I'm like, well, congratulations, kid. You found it. So what did I do? After a half an hour, washed my face, made myself a cup of hot chocolate, which was delicious. And I thought to myself, well, I don't want to punish this player in such a way that is going to detract from the other players at the game. At the same time, I do not want to discourage this player from staying here, because if I kick them out, that means I'm sending them into the world with this very bad idea or very bad thought pattern, so I need to fix that. So I created Jack. Now, Jack was a gray jester, this kind of evil, neutral kind of creature that would basically curse players. Not characters. He would curse players based on what actions that they did. So I introduced this big story arc, and the character found like an ace of spades in his pocket, and then he suddenly started seeing this mannequin sort of popping up in random places, and he kept trying to destroy it, but it kept popping up places. And eventually he was approached by a jester looking like the mannequin. And the jester explained that everyone, in the world has these strings attached to them. A lot of people are attached to the one big person with strings, but every now and then he'll find people who are attached to different people. Jack was mad. But Jack could see when people were cursed, and Jack told this character that he was cursed because his person with the puppet string had received a curse. His curse was that anytime he saw treasure or anytime he saw gold, it was like a 80% to 20% chance that it was actually some kind of trap, some kind of pitfall that he was simply denied the ability to make perception checks for. All it was in front of you, you see a large treasure chest. The treasure chest has a glistening golden lock and a pearlescent inlay. It looks as though it's probably got some pretty heavy valuables in it. As they walk up to it, the box fades and disappears. You realize you have stepped off a ravine. You begin to slide down the muddy embankment when you can see a tall tree branch, and hanging from that tree branch is a rope. The rope is made of gold. As you reach up to grab it, the rope fades from your hand and you have a serpent in your hand. It bites you in the neck. So basically, he had a curse where everything of value that he saw was twisted in such a way that it would never benefit him. Ergo, if he was the one leading the group, constantly finding treasure and stuff like that, then no one would ever actually find treasure. Meaning that the book that he had downloaded now bore no relevance. He was getting nothing special. He was getting nothing unique. He tried to change characters, and I explained to him that, well, your character's not cursed, your player's cursed. But from that point on, he learnt that lesson. And so did everyone. No one since then has invoked the wrath of Jack. Except one kid who wouldn't stop swearing. And then pretty much every time he swore, he took penalties. But, we got through there in the end, and he stopped swearing. So yeah, Jack comes out to give my kids a good narrative story and a semi-negative / positive reinforcement in etiquettes and values. So I suppose the short answer of this story, is that when you're dealing with teenagers, you're always going to find those moments to push and test your boundaries. What makes you a great GM is finding out what those boundaries are, and finding out what exactly you need to do and what it would take for you to stick around, keep playing with these people, keep playing with these awesome kids, and still have a great time and instill those great values. I suppose the next thing, of course, when dealing with teenagers and the like, is dealing with expression. Now, during this period of time for a young person, they are learning about themselves. They're learning about what type of individual they are and what kind of individuals they want to play in a role-playing game. Some of them will have ideas. Some of them will have great thoughts about, playing a Lizardfolk nobleman or playing a lone warrior who doesn't get along with anyone. These ideas, some great, some poor, can always be used in your game. You as a GM just need to be able to encourage them and guide them to the right information. Don't spoon feed teenagers because they don't accept it. They will not like it. Instead, take those times to guide them to find their own discoveries. In the case of the Lizardfolk, I, for example, have always enjoyed a world where Lizardfolks are xenophobic and very tribal. And this individual loves Lizardfolks, but has no concept of connecting the race to the class and to the backstory. So at some point or another, I think it was quite literally a case of, I want to play a Lizardfolk merchant who is part of the noble house range in the land that is ruled by humans, and the humans are incredibly xenophobic, even against other humans. And you have to sit there and you'd be like, but you see how a Lizardfolk wouldn't work in that? Now, you could sit there and you could just tell them the answer. Or instead, what you could do is say, awesome, I love the idea of you playing a Lizardfolk. Here is some literature on the Lizardfolk in this world. Have a read of it and see if you can make a character. Sure enough, after enough time, that person got to a point where they were just nailing it. Right now they know how to play a Lizardfolk better than I think some people will ever find out, because they've just read all the material. So leading them on that journey of discovery is so important. All right. The last category is, of course, our young adults. Now, the young adults, I usually value between the ages of, say, maybe 17 is close to there, 17 to 24. These people in this category are mature enough, and they've either learning for the first time, in which case they'd be learning the same way an adult would learn as they joined a role-playing game, or they have been playing for a while, and now they have accepted a position where, well, now we are on even playing fields. It is no longer an adult and a child playing. It is now an adult and an adult playing, and I need to be treated differently. I need to be able to build and construct and have the same kind of power that the GM has. This is a very interesting portion of the experience of playing with young players. And most of it because there are two ways this can go down. The first is that the player becomes a GM, learns all the nuances and the skills, and you suddenly have this awesome and creative person who loves and enjoys role-playing as much as you do. The second type is the kind who believes themselves to know absolutely everything and will run off by themselves after playing very minimally and think that, well, no, I've played, therefore I am awesome and I can run games. Role-playing and GMing are two very different things. GMing takes a lot of discipline, a lot of hard work, and a lot of effort. Young players in the young adult category don't necessarily see all that. So when dealing with players of that age, of that variety, you really need to make sure that they understand that, yeah, there is a lot that goes in. We understand that you have an active social life because, well, you're a young adult. You can now go out to clubs. You can now go out drinking. You can now do, you're socializing with romantic partners, and that's fantastic, But we're nerds, and if we're a GM, we spend hours sitting there trying to explain to our wives while what we're doing is valuable. And for the most part, it's just about understanding that and sharing that understanding. Be open, communicate, and make sure that they feel as though the effort that you're putting into their table is something that they understand need to reciprocate now that they are adults. That's the important thing. If you're playing at a table and your players do not appreciate what you're doing, it's nothing worse, honestly. And you'll find that young adults that build up on that know and understand this, often become the best role players later on, and even the best GMs. I want to share a story now, just real quick, about one of the young people who went through this process with me at the youth center. This particular individual came to the attendance of the youth center with a carer. They were special needs, and they had someone to help break the ice. The carer was someone who had experienced role-playing games in the past and was very, very happy and excited to join my program along with the young person. And over the course of a few years, this young person pretty much went from playing like this loner kind of character who didn't really get on with anyone. You can kind of tell there was like maybe a little bit of a reflection upon themselves with their character. All the way to the point where now, as a young adult in the ages of 19 to 20, now have an entirely different viewpoint on the role-playing game. They're now without a carer. They're now one of the main leaders of our community group at the youth center. And more importantly, they're also someone confident enough to run their own games, not only at the youth center itself, but also at schools and other places, in addition to their own desires of playing with friends and family. This, for me, is the quintessential importance of playing with young players, is you're not playing with them to have the moment that you're in. In my occupation as a GM, my goal isn't to play games with kids. It's to get them to the point where they grow up to be people who are going to be awesome role players that everyone is going to want to play with, that people are going to just love socializing with, that they're all going to overcome their anxieties, their self-confidences, and get to a point where they're just having fun, enjoying this community that we have all built together. So that's my job, basically. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys understand and appreciate the gravitas, I suppose, that comes with playing with younger players. Whether it's a public game like I run, or whether it's with your family members, it is never a bad idea to remember how important role playing can be for young people and young minds. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Go check out all of our really cool stuff in our description below. We have Twitch, we have Patreon, we have our Facebook page, and of course, this incredible background art as well was provided by an awesome artist whose link to his website is in the description below as well. It's actually the artwork which inspired this series in general. So look out for more of them as we continue to discuss them in the weeks to come. Thanks again, guys, and I hope you have an amazing and lucky-filled rolling adventure. And till next time, game hard or die trying. See you guys.